Back in the 70s, a new home cost around $48,000 in 1973, about $300,000 in today's dollars. By 1979, it was closer to $80,000, or $360,000 now. Compare that to nearly $420,000 today. Rates were high back then, sure, but prices didn't swallow whole paychecks the way they do now. Buying a brand new car in 1975 cost about $4,200, which works out to $25,000 in today's money. Nothing fancy, just a solid family sedan with crank windows and an AM/FM radio. These days, with backup cameras, touchscreens, and airbags, the average price is nearly $48,000. Safer, yes, but the sticker shock is something else. A family's household income in the mid-70s ran about $11,800, which equals around $71,000 today. By the end of the decade, it climbed near $16,500, about $76,000 today. It was enough to keep food on the table, a roof overhead, and maybe even a vacation. Today's incomes are higher, but the bills sure rise faster. Renting in the 1970s felt manageable. A two-bedroom apartment in 1975 ran about $140 a month, equal to $840 today. Most folks could swing it without panic. Fast forward to now, and those same apartments run $1,800 to $2,500 in big cities. The rent eats paychecks whole, leaving little room for breathing. Gas was a story in itself. Around 60 cents a gallon in 1973, about $3.60 today. But after the oil shocks, it climbed to 86 cents by 1979, which equals $3.90 now. Prices moved around, sure, but the rhythm felt steadier. These days, it's $3 to $4 a gallon and bouncing like a yo-yo. A cross-country flight in 1977 from New York to Los Angeles cost about $400, nearly $2,000 in today's money. Deregulation would bring fares down later, but flying then was an event: meals, legroom, and dressing up. Today, you can sometimes fly the same route for under $300, but you'll pay in fees and comfort. A year at a public college in the mid-70s cost about $500, or roughly $3,000 today. You could mow lawns in the summer and pay it off. Now, that same year costs $10,000 to $11,000 before housing or books. Families didn't talk about student debt back then. It just wasn't part of the picture. A fast food burger in the 1970s cost 35 to 50 cents, about $2 to $3 in today's money. Fries and a Coke didn't break the bank either. It was filling, simple, and enough to treat the kids. Now, value menus aren't much of a value anymore, and families notice the difference in their wallets. The hum of factory whistles, the talk in union halls, and the pride of American steel. That was middle-class footing in the 1970s. A man or woman could put in years at the plant and raise a family. These days, much of that's gone overseas, replaced by service work and global supply chains. Saturdays often meant a trip to the mall or flipping through glossy catalogs. Shopping was an outing, with an orange Julius in hand and a stack of wish lists. Today, it's e-carts, shipping labels, and worrying about porch pirates. Faster and easier, sure, but some of the fun and the social side got lost along the way. Parenting once meant telling the kids to be home by dinner and letting them pedal their bikes until the street lights flickered on. In the 2020s, it's car seats, calendar alerts, and location-sharing apps. Children are safer in many ways, but that carefree sense of independence we grew up with is a little harder to hand down. Childcare often meant mom, grandma, or a neighbor down the block. If you paid, it was maybe $40 a week in 1978, about $200 today. Affordable enough to make ends meet. Compare that to now, where daycare runs $1,500 to $2,000 a month per child. One of the biggest modern burdens never seen back then. Family health insurance in the late 70s cost about $600 to $700 a year, around $3,000 to $3,500 today. The paperwork could fit in a desk drawer, and premiums didn't drain savings. Now, the average family plan runs nearly $22,000 a year. It's hard not to feel like healthcare went from manageable to crushing. A doctor's visit in 1975 cost around $15 to $20, equal to $90 to $120 today. You'd walk into a small office, get treated, and walk out with a bill you could actually pay. These days, visits run $100 to $200 or more before insurance even chips in. Simpler times, fewer layers of red tape. Mortgage rates in the 70s climbed high, 9% in the mid-decade and hitting 11 to 13% by 1979. That sounds rough, but home prices were so much lower compared to income that families still managed. Today's rates are lower, sure, but with house prices towering, the math feels heavier than it did back then. Savings accounts and CDs in the 1970s could pay 5 to 8%, sometimes even more. Families saw their nest eggs grow without risking a dime. Today, after decades of near-zero interest, saving feels slower, and you almost have to gamble in the stock market. Back then, patience and a passbook actually paid off. Teenagers once cruised the back roads for fun, radios up, no destination, no one tracking their whereabouts. Gas was cheap, and nobody worried much. Now, location-sharing apps mean kids rarely vanish for a night of harmless freedom, and the gas money goes toward data plans. The freedom of just driving feels harder to find. A video night in 1979 meant renting a VHS tape for about $3, equal to $12 today. You'd popcorn, dim the lights, and treat it like an event. Now it's streaming menus and endless scrolling. Back then, less choice made it more special. You knew exactly what you were sitting down to watch. Grocery shopping felt steady. Bread ran about 33 cents a loaf, milk was $1.50 a gallon, and eggs were 80 cents a dozen. In today's money, that's $2 for bread, $9 for milk, and $4.80 for eggs. Prices rose, sure, but families didn't talk about groceries breaking the budget. The heavier costs were still elsewhere. A movie ticket in 1975 cost about $2, which equals $12 today. You'd line up outside the theater, smell the buttered popcorn, and catch a double feature if you were lucky. Now tickets run $13 to $15, and premium screens cost more. Same popcorn, bigger screens, but a little less of that magic excitement. Utility bills in the 70s didn't sting as hard. Electricity ran about $35 a month in 1977, equal to $160 today. Families didn't fret much about keeping the lights on. Now, it's not unusual to see winter bills hit $300 to $500. Power's cleaner, yes, but it sure feels heavier on the pocketbook. Sending a letter in 1975 took a 10-cent stamp, around 60 cents today. Now it's about 68 cents. Not a huge change in real terms. But back then, letters mattered more. Bills, love notes, postcards, they all came in envelopes. Today, the mailbox feels lonelier, even if the price hasn't changed that much. Making a long-distance call in the 70s cost 10 to 20 cents a minute, about 50 cents to $1 in today's terms. You thought carefully before dialing, and every minute felt precious. Now video calls bounce across the globe for free. Convenient, yes, but we've lost that sense of value when voices traveled far. A color TV in 1975 cost around $400 to $500, equal to $2,400 to $3,000 today. For many families, it was the prized centerpiece of the living room. Now you can buy a 55-inch 4K set for $300 to $500. Bigger picture, lower price. But those big cabinets sure felt like something back then. Early personal computers were staggering luxuries. The Apple II in 1977 sold for $1,298, around $6,800 in today's money. Today, a capable laptop runs $500 to $1,000 and does more than anyone dreamed then. Back in the 70s, though, just seeing words appear on a green screen felt like watching the future unfold. Kids in the 1970s walked or biked to school, often with a crossing guard on the corner and a buddy alongside. In the 2020s, it's car lines, buses, and ride shares. Safety's improved, no doubt, but kids have less of that independent roaming we all took for granted when the world felt a little smaller. Workwear in the 70s meant suits, ties, and stockings. You dressed for the office as if appearance was part of the paycheck. Today, business casual and hoodies often share the conference table. Comfort rules more than polish, and while that's easier on the feet, some folks miss the pride that came with dressing sharp every morning. Offices hummed with Selectric typewriters and the smudge of carbon paper. The clatter was constant, and paper trays piled high. Today, it's shared documents, screen shares, and AI spell checks doing the heavy lifting. Efficiency is higher, but the rhythm and camaraderie of those noisy typing pools is something only an older ear still remembers. The daily commute meant carbureted sedans and AM radio filling the morning air with static and chatter. Rolling down the window meant cranking a handle. Now it's hybrids, Bluetooth podcasts, and Waze steering you around the mess. Traffic hasn't gone away, but the way we keep ourselves company on the road sure has. Amtrak in the 70s was slower, cheaper, but still felt like an option. You could hop a train and see the countryside click past the window. Today, trains are often pricier, less reliable, and overshadowed by discount flights or long drives. Back then, rail felt romantic. Today, it feels more like an afterthought. Roadside motels in the 70s ran under $20 or $30 a night, about $90 to $140 in today's money. No resort fees, just a free ice machine and maybe a pool out back. Now mid-range hotels cost $120 to $250, and you might get charged for parking right outside your room. Furnishing a living room in 1977 cost around $700, about $3,300 in today's money. A sofa, chairs, and maybe a coffee table, all durable, solid wood, and fabric meant to last. Today, a mid-range set often runs $4,000 or more, and many pieces feel disposable. Back then, your furniture stayed with you for years. A good refrigerator in 1977 cost about $450, equal to $2,100 today. Families expected them to last 15 to 20 years. Today, new models run $2,000 to $3,500, with digital screens and fancy dispensers, but they often break sooner. Fancier features, shorter lifespans, one of those trades people didn't ask for. Back in the mid-70s, the average new home came in around 1,650 to 1,700 square feet, just enough for a family, but not sprawling. Today, the average tops 2,300. More bedrooms, bigger kitchens, and open floor plans sound nice, but they also mean bigger heating bills, higher cooling costs, and more furniture to fill it all. In the 1970s, one steady paycheck could cover the mortgage, the groceries, and maybe even tuck away savings. Mom often stayed home, and Dad's job kept the lights on. These days, it usually takes 2 full incomes just to keep pace with the big 3: housing, healthcare, and childcare. Job security in the 70s leaned heavily on seniority and loyalty. Put in your years, and the company looked after you with a pension at the end. Today, it's a different ballgame. Job hopping, and stock markets dictating your retirement. Back then, stability felt like part of the deal. Now it feels like a gamble. Big national moments in the 70s, bicentennial parades in 76, Olympic gold medals, and space launches had a way of pulling people together. Folks crowded around TVs, waving flags, feeling a sense of pride. These days, headlines often split screens, households, and even dinner tables. The unity of those moments seems harder to find now. Banking in the 70s meant passbooks and a teller who knew your name. Cutoffs came at 3 p.m. on Fridays, and if you missed it, you waited. Today, it's mobile apps, instant transfers, and 24/7 access. The convenience is unmatched, but the personal touch, the smile across the counter, is mostly gone from the experience. Payday in the 1970s meant a paper check in your hand, maybe cashed at the bank or tucked in an envelope at home. You could see and feel your week's work. Today, it's direct deposit, instant pay cards, or even on-demand wage apps. The money moves faster, but sometimes the budgeting discipline doesn't follow. In the 70s, there weren't as many surprise charges lurking in the fine print. A movie ticket was just that, a movie ticket. Today, every purchase seems shadowed by service fees, delivery charges, handling fees, or convenience costs. Back then, what you saw was mostly what you paid, without the nickel and diming we see everywhere now. Back in the 70s, you had 3 major TV networks and maybe some local channels. Everyone watched the same shows and talked about them the next day. Now it's endless streaming, podcasts, and shorts. Choice got louder, attention got shorter, and that shared cultural conversation we once had feels a little more scattered now. News arrived the next day, folded in the morning paper, or reported on the nightly broadcast. You had time to digest it before the next round. Today, alerts ping your phone by the minute, headlines change by the hour, and the pace feels relentless. Less waiting, maybe, but more worrying comes with the constant noise. Privacy in the 70s meant an unlisted phone number and photo envelopes picked up at the drugstore. What you did and who you called mostly stayed your business. Today, it's cloud trails, location pings, and smart microphones on the counter. Life is more connected than ever, but also more watched than most folks realize. Schools in the 70s leaned on chalkboards, film strips, and overhead projectors. Teachers rolled TVs into classrooms on tall carts, and that alone felt exciting. Today, it's smartboards, tablets, and digital portals for parents. Learning tools have advanced, but something about those clunky projectors and chalk-dusted erasers carried their own kind of charm. Planning a trip in the 70s meant visiting a travel agent or flipping through brochures. Tickets were paper, itineraries typed out. Today, we click through price trackers, apps, and self-rebooking. It's easier and faster, no doubt. But back then, the process felt more personal, and sometimes a little more like part of the adventure itself. Navigation used to mean a glove box full of folding maps and the occasional stop at a gas station to ask directions. Today, GPS gently nags at every turn, rerouting around traffic before you even see it. It's more reliable, sure, but there was something satisfying about finding your own way with a paper map. Cars in the 70s gave you lap belts and metal dashboards. Mistakes weren't forgiven easily. Today's vehicles come with airbags, anti-lock brakes, lane keep assist, and automatic emergency braking. Modern cars will often save you from yourself. Back then, driving demanded more attention and carried more risk, but people accepted it as part of the road. Ashtrays were built into office desks, airplane armrests, and restaurant tables. Cigarette smoke clung to clothes, ceilings turned yellow, and nobody thought twice about it. Today, broad bands keep indoor spaces smoke-free. Cleaner lungs, clearer air, and fresher paint jobs. Progress most folks are glad to see, even if nostalgia remembers those smoky lounges. In the 1970s, plenty of people had a few and still drove themselves home. It was too common, and accidents followed. These days, stricter laws, checkpoints, and ride-share apps put guardrails around bad decisions. It's a cultural shift for the better, even if folks remember the looser days before those lessons were learned. Suburban blocks in the 70s often organized crime watches and block parties. Neighbors knew each other by name, and streets felt like shared spaces. Today, it's neighborhood apps, doorbell cameras, and motion alerts. The tools are fancier, but they've replaced some of the in-person trust that once tied entire streets together. Cars burned leaded gasoline, spray cans hissed with CFCS, and smog choked skylines. It was normal until it wasn't. Today, unleaded fuel, catalytic converters, and the ozone slow recovery show how lessons were learned the hard way. Back then, folks didn't think twice about what poured into the air. Now we know better. Energy use in the 70s meant drafty windows and 12 miles per gallon station wagons. Today, we've got LED bulbs, tighter building codes, hybrids, and electric cars. Families once layered sweaters when the heating oil bill got high. Now technology stretches the dollar further, even if the bills still make us groan when they land in the mailbox. Supper often meant casseroles, meatloaf, or a frozen TV dinner straight from the oven. It was hearty, simple, and fed the whole family. Today, it's organics, meal kits, and delivery apps. Choices are endless, but that nightly rhythm of shared dishes, hot and homemade, straight from Mom's oven, carries a kind of comfort that's harder to order in. Portion sizes in the 1970s were simply smaller. A fast food meal filled you without overflowing the tray. Supersizing came later, and waistlines followed the marketing. These days, servings often stretch beyond what one person needs, and leftovers are common. Back then, moderation was built into the meal without anyone making a big fuss about it. Coffee came in bottomless mugs at the local diner, often 50 cents a cup, about $3 today. It was hot, simple, and poured with a smile. Now it's $4 to $7 for a latte with a loyalty app. Fancier, sure, but those old bottomless refills over a Formica counter carried their own kind of magic. A six-pack of beer in 1977 cost $2.50 to $3.50, about $12 to $17 today. It was the go-to for a weekend barbecue or a ball game on TV. Today, craft four-packs can cost the same or more with exotic hops and fancy labels. Back then, beer was simpler, cheaper, and shared just as easily. Back in the 70s, one ball game a week on TV made Sunday afternoons feel like an event. Families gathered around, and everyone knew which game it was. Now, you can stream every league nightly in HD with endless options. Funny thing is, you miss nothing, and yet somehow it feels like you miss a lot. Music discovery once came from radio countdowns or record store clerks slipping you a suggestion. You'd wait all week to hear your favorite song crack the top 40. Today, algorithms read your mood before you do, serving up endless playlists. It's convenient, but it lacks the magic of stumbling on something by chance. Photos in the 70s meant film canisters, envelopes from the drugstore, and 1-hour labs if you were in a hurry. You never knew how a picture turned out until you picked it up. Today, 4K phones snap and edit in seconds. with cloud backups holding thousands. Memories multiplied, but albums vanished from the coffee table. Social life ran through bowling leagues, church suppers, and lodges that filled evenings with laughter. You shook hands, passed casseroles, and bowled spares alongside neighbors. Today, it's group chats, discords, and fitness apps keeping people connected. Quicker, sure, but there was something grounding about a room full of familiar faces sharing food and time. Layaway was how families stretched their dollars, paying a little each week until the bicycle or sofa was finally yours. Today, buy now, pay later apps split purchases into microloans. Slicker technology, higher impulse risk. Back then, waiting built anticipation, and the reward felt sweeter when you finally walked out the door carrying it home. Disneyland tickets in the late 70s cost around $8 to $10, $40 to $55 in today's terms. It felt like an affordable family treat. Now, single-day admission runs over $150 a person. The magic scaled up, sure, but so did the prices, and for many families it feels more like a luxury trip. Theme park food was cheap enough that a family didn't think twice about grabbing burgers. $1 bought you a hot meal in 1977, 5 or 6 in today's terms. Now, those same burgers run $12 to $15. The ketchup is still free for now, but the sticker shock makes parents pack snacks in the car. Dorm rooms and off-campus apartments in the 70s cost $120 to $160 a month, $600 to $800 in today's money. Students split rent and somehow managed on part-time jobs. Now, college housing runs $1,000 to $1,500 per bed, often more. Roommates became a business model, and independence costs a whole lot more. Textbooks once ran $15 to $25 each, maybe $80 to $130 in today's money. Painful, but survivable. Now, they're often $100 to $300 apiece, sometimes locked behind digital codes that expire. Learning itself can feel paywalled, where back then it was heavy on the backpack, but lighter on the wallet. Credit cards in the 70s had sky-high APRs, but you didn't face annual fees, cash advance charges, or sneaky maintenance costs. Today, cards dangle rewards and miles but hide fees and buy now, pay later traps in the fine print. Back then, you paid interest if you carried a balance. Health insurance menus were simpler in the 70s. An HMO or a PPO, maybe through your union or job. Premiums were lower and paperwork fit in a drawer. Now it's high deductibles, HSAs, narrow networks, and endless acronyms. Modern care is more advanced, but just figuring out coverage can feel like a full-time job. Retirement in the 70s meant a pension check and Social Security combining for a modest but steady living. Companies kept the promise if you stayed loyal. Today, it's 401ks riding market moods and the burden on individuals to plan wisely. Safety nets turned into tight ropes, and retirement feels less certain than it once did. The top federal tax rate in 1980 was still a staggering 70% for the richest Americans. Most families never saw that, of course, but it loomed large. Today, the top sits at 37%. Ordinary households then and now still shape their tax lives around deductions and credits, but the brackets tell a story of change. TV repair shops, radio technicians, and cobblers kept things running in the 70s. If your set flickered or your shoes wore thin, you fixed them. Today, it's a replace-over-repair culture, though a right-to-repair push is clawing back. Back then, the service counter knew your name. Now the warranty often says it's cheaper to toss. Butcher counters and corner groceries dotted nearly every neighborhood. You knew the man slicing your roast, and he might throw in a little extra. Today, big box supermarkets and delivery apps dominate. Small shops survive, but mostly as boutique experiences in trendy areas. Once, food shopping was as much about people as it was about produce. Free checking was common in the 70s. No minimum balances or surprise fees. Banks wanted your loyalty, and you got a toaster for opening an account. Today, maintenance charges, ATM fees, and overdraft penalties nibble away. Online no-fee banks offer relief, but the idea of a local branch rewarding you just for walking in is long gone. 3 trusted anchors, Cronkite, Jennings, delivered the news each night, and people took it as gospel. Today, feeds fragment facts into a dozen directions, with echo chambers shaping what folks believe. Back then, everyone argued over the same story. Now, half the time it feels like people aren't even living in the same reality. Advertising in the 70s was jingles on the radio, spreads in the paper, and 30-second TV spots. Once you turned off the set, it stayed off. Today, ads follow you room to room, track your clicks, and whisper suggestions from a dozen screens. Back then, you could at least escape the salesman when you wanted to. School fees in the 70s were modest. A few dollars for field trips, maybe a supply list. Sports often came free with the school. Now it's pay-to-play athletics, fundraising drives, and shopping lists that stretch budgets. Storm preparation once meant flashlight batteries, candles, and radio warnings crackling through the air. Neighbors checked on each other, and you waited for updates when the weatherman came on. Today, phones buzz with alerts. Live radar maps glow in your hand, and everyone turns into an amateur meteorologist. Helpful, sure, but a little less communal. Payphones once stood on every corner, and a quarter in your pocket meant you could always call home. Today, they're museum pieces, rusted shells of another time. Now, if your cell battery dies or the signal drops, there's no lifeline waiting on the sidewalk. Back then, even strangers could lend you a dime to talk. There was no internet at home in the 70s. Your news came from the paper, your banking from a teller, and your bills from the mailbox. Today, broadband at $60 to $100 a month became the fourth utility, right alongside water and lights. The world is faster now, but it's never really offline. Mailboxes once brimmed with handwritten letters, bills in windowed envelopes, and the occasional postcard. Walking back from the curb with that stack was part of the daily rhythm. Today, the box holds mostly catalogs and flyers, while the porch stacks with parcels and return labels. The handwriting's gone, replaced by tracking numbers and barcodes. In the 70s, bikes flew helmet-free, knees scraped, hair whipping in the wind, and nobody gave it much thought. Today, helmets, pads, and certified gear keep heads intact. A good trade, most would agree. But there was a wildness to the old rides when you felt invincible pedaling down a hill with no brakes in sight. Lead paint and asbestos lingered as quiet dangers in older homes, legacy headaches people didn't always see. Today, stricter bans, labels, and inspections keep the worst out of reach. Safer, yes, but expensive too. Remediation bills stack up. Back then, families worried more about bills and less about chemicals hiding in the walls and tiles. Air conditioning wasn't standard in the 70s. Many homes relied on box fans or a single window unit outside the Sunbelt. Summers were hotter, but utility bills lighter. Today, central AC hums in houses nationwide, far cooler but noticeably higher in cost. We're comfortable now, no doubt, but those summer electric bills make you sweat anyway. Homeownership sat steady around 65% back then, often achievable on a single income. Today, the percentage is about the same, but the path is longer. Debt, high prices, and delayed savings keep first keys out of reach for many young adults. Families eventually get there, but the dream takes more patience and more paychecks. Mixtapes were labors of love pieced together at a cassette deck, hitting record and stop at just the right moment. You gave them to friends or sweethearts, every track chosen with care. Today, a playlist link fires off in seconds, less hiss, less heart. Back then, music carried fingerprints, yours, etched into every pause and rewind. Address books once tracked birthdays, anniversaries, and phone numbers in neat script. Flipping through those pages felt personal, the ink telling its own story. Today, contacts and calendars hum quietly in the cloud, reminders pinging without thought. Convenient, yes, but there's something missing when handwriting gives way to apps that remember for you. Meeting someone in the 70s often happened at church, work, or a friend's cookout. You shook hands, traded stories, maybe worked up the courage to ask for a phone number. Now it's apps, swipes, and DMs. Same butterflies, new screens. Back then, it took patience and presence. Today, it takes bandwidth and a profile picture. Waiting was normal, film had to be developed, mail had to arrive, records had to ship. Anticipation was part of the process, and you savored what finally came. Now, everything is instant, from photos to packages, but somehow, less feels special. The pace is faster, but the sweetness of patience has been lost along the way. Family diners and salad bars dotted every town in the 70s, places where waitresses knew your order and kids filled plates with pudding. Today, fast casual chains, delivery-only ghost kitchens, and QR code menus dominate. Convenient, sure, but less neighborhood character. Back then, eating out was about people and atmosphere, not just efficiency and calories. Music collections were vinyl and cassettes, stacked proudly on shelves you could flip through like a diary. You owned the songs you loved. Today, streaming rents access, millions of tracks everywhere at once, but nothing to pass down. Back then, you could hand your kid your records. Now, the music disappears if the subscription lapses. Airports in the 70s let you walk folks right to the gate, shoes on, hugs long, and goodbyes unhurried. Security was a glance, not a gauntlet. Today, it's TSA lines, ID scans, belts in bins, and liquids in bags. Safer, sure, but less human. Back then, airports were about journeys. Now they're about checkpoints. Fitness meant mall walking, neighborhood jogs, and Jane Fonda tapes playing in living rooms. People followed along in leotards and sweatbands, laughing at missteps. Today, wearables buzz, boutique gyms boom, and classes stream live at dawn. The technology is sharper, but the joy of sweating together with neighbors felt simpler, warmer, and a little less commercial. Cars in the 70s hoped to clear 100,000 miles before being retired to the junkyard. Mechanics kept them alive, but it was often a gamble. Today, 200,000 miles is common, thanks to better fluids, metallurgy, and maintenance reminders. Cars last longer, but they also cost far more to begin with. Family sedans in the 70s sipped 15 to 20 miles per gallon, and nobody thought much about it. Gas was cheap enough, even with shocks. Today, 25 to 40 miles per gallon is standard, with hybrids and EVs skipping the pumps entirely. More efficient now, yes, but filling the tank still pinches harder on the wallet. Transit fares were coins dropped in a box, paper transfers clutched by hand. A ride across town was straightforward. Today, it's contactless taps, variable pricing, and apps that track your balance. Easier in some ways, but also less tangible. Back then, you always knew if you had the fare. It rattled in your pocket. Tickets came from box office windows with lines curling down the block for big shows. You paid the price printed and got your stub. Today, it's online queues, dynamic pricing, and service fees that make a seat in the aisle feel like an investment. Convenience is nice, but it's hard to beat the honesty of a stub. Equity built sooner back then. Lower home prices meant families climbed the ladder faster, often building wealth by middle age. Today, high prices and low inventory slow that first rung. It takes longer to get a steak, and that delay makes every other milestone feel harder. Back then, owning felt achievable. Today, it feels deferred. Small business once meant a downtown storefront, your name on the awning, neighbors walking in the door. Today, Shopify, Etsy, and creator shops spin up from a spare bedroom. More reach, less community. Back then, the pride came from sweeping your own sidewalk. Now it comes from tracking clicks and shipping labels. Different pride, maybe. A high school diploma in the 70s could still land you a family wage job, whether in a factory, a trade, or an office. Today, credentials stack up along with loans, and the diploma alone rarely opens doors. Back then, finishing school felt like enough. Now, it's just the first of many expensive steps. Off the clock once meant truly off. You left work at the office, and evenings belonged to you. Today, Slack, Email and cell phones keep work buzzing on the nightstand, blurring the line. Back then, your time was your own after 5. Now, the job follows you home, even when you never leave the house. Life in the 70s felt slower, with fewer choices but closer neighbors. People gathered in living rooms instead of timelines, and the world outside waited until morning. Today is faster, louder, and always on. Tech and airfares may have fallen in real terms, but the big basics, housing, childcare, healthcare, grew heavier. That's the difference folks still feel.